So let us wind up the topic tax invoice today. So what we have covered and what we will be covering today, let me show this to you. Now see what we have covered. We have covered 31.1, which talks about taxable goods. Last date in case of taxable goods. 31.2, last date in case of taxable services. From both these subsections, the document issued was tax invoice. (31.3) Clause A. In this, the document issued was revised tax invoice. Clause B was no tax invoice if value does not exceed 200. Clause C was related to bill of supply. So clause D was related to receipt voucher. You must know that what we have covered basically till today. Clause E was related to refund voucher. Clause F was related to revised tax invoice, no tax invoice, bill of supply, receipt, refund. Clause F was talking about tax invoice in case of reverse charge mechanism situations. And clause G was talking about payment voucher. This is what till today we have covered. Now tax invoice particulars are mentioned in rule 46. Revised tax invoice particulars are mentioned in rule 53. Particulars also we have covered. Now I am telling you the rule number. You are not supposed to learn these numbers for undergraduate level, but you must know in reality what we have covered. Bill of supply was rule 49. Receipt voucher was rule 50. Refund voucher was rule 51 and payment voucher was rule 52. This is what we have discussed till today as far as the topic tax invoice is concerned. And now let me start with a new topic. Note the topic next provision of tax invoice 31.4. It talks about the last date of issuing tax invoice in case of continuous supply of goods. So what is the last date in case of continuous supply of goods? So let me tell you what is this continuous supply first. As the name suggests, continuous supply, so I should not frame general definition. That is the mistake in case of any legal subject. If I frame general definition, I must read the act, relevant act, that how they have defined it in the act. But as the name suggests continuous supply, I am giving you a simple example. Suppose somewhere a factory is being made, and in this factory iron is to be supplied. and this person is iron supplier. So iron is required in this factory and iron supplier is there. So under a contract, they will supply the iron continuously and the factory owner will make the payment regularly. So the chain will go on and it's a continuous process. For example, it will take 2 years to completely construct the factory where iron will be supplied regularly. It is looking like continuous supply, because when such things happen, invoice is not required every time. Similarly, payment is not required every time. The factory owner can give lump sum payment, for example, 2 crore rupees each month. So there may be some situations, and he will supply, iron supplier will supply the iron regularly. So this is what the things can happen in case of continuous supply. Now, definition of continuous supply we must first read. Definition of continuous supply is given in 2 clause 32. Continuous supply of goods. So let me read it. Section 2 clause 32 first for you. This is what my section 2 clause 32 of this CGST Act, and they have defined, this clause has defined continuous supply. Continuous supply of goods means a supply of goods which is provided or agreed to be provided continuously or on recurrent basis under a contract. So contract is necessary, under a contract, whether or not by means of a wire, cable, pipeline or other conduit, and for which supplier invoices the recipient on a regular or periodic basis. That's it. So for continuous supply, supply through wire or pipeline is not required, is not necessary. Like petrol is supplied, petrol is not within the GST purview, but there may be some gas or chemicals which may be supplied through pipeline. So it says that continuous supply doesn't always require the pipeline. It can be without pipeline also, like in my example, that is also a continuous supply. A contract between the iron supplier and a contract between the factory owner who requires iron for the construction of the factory. It's a continuous supply. So this is sure that this is the definition of continuous supply. Now, what is the last date by which invoice is issued? Is this last date after 2 years when the iron supply is over, or what? Now, government doesn't want to wait for long when it comes to issue of tax invoice, because the moment tax invoice is issued, tax liability meter starts. Till invoice is there, you cannot ask anyone to pay the tax. You means Government of India. The moment you have tax invoice, then government can say that now you make the payment within that much time. So I have shown you the definition of continuous supply. Now let me show you the provision which deals with continuous supply. It was section 31, subsection 4. And what it says is that this is my section 31.4. It says that in case of continuous supply of goods, I hope the act is visible, where successive statements of accounts or successive payments are involved. Successive. For example, after every month, supplier gives this statement of account to the recipient. After 2 months, for example, recipient makes the payment of 2 crore. So anything can happen. It depends upon the terms and condition between the supplier and the recipient, when the accounts will be prepared on regular basis and when the payment will be given on regular basis. Act says that whether it is accounts or payment, whatever is the case, the invoice shall be issued, that means must be issued before or at the time either each such statement is issued or, as the case may be, each such payment is received. So the moment accounts are supplied, by that date invoice has to be issued by the supplier. Or accounts are not yet supplied but payment is received in advance, for example, or not in advance, just on account payment is received, then on that day invoice has to be issued. This is the maximum delay which government is giving, that till you are not preparing the account so payment is not received, then no need to issue the tax invoice. But the moment anything happens, so the thing which happens first, whether payment is received by you or statement of account is sent by you being a supplier to the recipient, issue the invoice on that date. This is what the last date in case of continuous supply of goods. Please raise your hand if the concept is clear. In case of any doubt, you can ask. Next point. Just like goods are continuously supplied, services can also be continuously supplied. The simplest example is in institutions. For example, in our institution, there may be some contract which is given to annually clean the water tanks in the college premises. Cleaning of water tank is a supply, is a service. Cleaning of water purifiers is a service. Security services, etc., etc. There may be hundreds of services which are regular in nature, which are continuous in nature. But before telling you exactly what is continuous supply of service, you must know the definition. So this definition is given in section 2, clause 33. Let me first show you the definition. Now this is section 2, clause 33, continuous supply of service. Continuous supply of service means, so read it till this highlighted text only. Continuous supply of service means a supply of services which is provided or agreed to be provided continuously or on recurrent basis under a contract. Here also contract is must between the supplier and recipient for a period exceeding 3 months. Now this time period was not mentioned in case of continuous supply of goods, but it is mentioned in case of continuous supply of service. If the supplier and recipient's agreement for supply of service is less than 3 months, you cannot call it as continuous. So in this, the contract of supplier and contract between the supplier and recipient must be exceeding 3 months with periodic payment of obligation. That's it. So in case of continuous supply, regular payments are involved. And the contract to supply the service is exceeding 3 months. Now in this case, determination of last date by which invoice is issued is little bit lengthy as compared to continuous supply of goods. Let me again show you. Let me show that subsection now, 31 subsection 5. This is what my 31 subsection 5. Subject to the provisions of clause D of subsection 3 in case of continuous supply of services. But it says that section 31 subsection 5 is inferior than section 31 subsection 3 clause D, because this subsection 5 says subject to. That means first of all 31 3D is supreme, then only you read me, then only you apply me. This is what section 31 subsection 5 says. Now what is section 31 3D? Do you remember? It was about receipt voucher. Whenever you as a supplier received advance payment, you have to issue receipt voucher. That's it. This is what 31 subsection 3 clause D is. Now what it says in 31(5), what it says, in the contract, if the due date of payment is clearly mentioned, if the due date of payment is clearly mentioned in the contract, in that case, what is the last date by which invoice has to be issued? Last date is this due date. Invoice has to be issued by this due date in any case. But in so many contracts, the due date of payment is not mentioned. So if due date is not mentioned in the contract, then what option you have as a government of India? Then you will wait till actually the payment is realized. In that case, Government of India says that, or not the Government of India, I should say that Act says that where the due date of payment is not ascertainable from the contract, the invoice shall be issued before or at the time when the supplier receives actually the payment. In clause A, actual payment is of no use. Just simply check the due date. In clause B, due date is not at all available. That is why you go by the actual payment. And so many times your contract says that you complete the work, I will make you the payment. So in that case, where the payment is linked with the completion of event, then raise the invoice latest by the date on which your event is complete. That's it. Now let me make you understand this concept with the help of an example. (31.5). What about the tax invoice or the last date in case of continuous supply of services? Now, the definition of continuous supply of service is given in section 2, clause 33 of the CGST Act. Definition. And what this continuous supply says, in case of section 31.5, it says that in case you received some advance, then don't apply me. Apply 31.3D and issue the receipt voucher. Don't issue tax invoice. You cannot issue tax invoice in case of advance. आपको पता ही नहीं है क्या कुछ बिकने वाला, you don't know how much and what you are going to sell or supply. So you have to issue the receipt voucher. But if it is not advance, then you have to apply me in case of continuous supply. This is what the provisions are. And in this, the answer depends upon whether the due date is mentioned in the contract or not mentioned, or the event is linked with completion of event. Now, what example I want to give you is that X Limited AC repairing services is a supplier. For example, this has given or has taken a contract of annual maintenance cost. AMC is of AC is installed in Y Limited office premises. Okay, this was the concept, installed in office premises. Now the contract is of 1 year period. This contract is of you have to wait a second. I think the system is a little bit hanged. will work now. Please give me one more minute. The screen visible now? Is the screen visible?
No, sir.
Is the screen visible?
No, sir.
Not visible. Now is it visible? Is the notepad visible now?
No, sir. No.
Now is it visible?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, now see what we were discussing in continuous supply. So my example was, for example, A Limited, AC repairing services provider. Okay. So many times institutions avail annual maintenance cost or this contract. AMC contract was given by a college, XYZ college, for 1 year period. So this contract was for 1 year. So for continuous supply, it is necessary that the contract must mention the period of more than 3 months. So it's 1 year period. The point was, in this contract, it is mentioned that the due date of payment will be 17th of every month. 17th of every month. So work will go on, payment will continuously come regularly. So 17th of every month is the due date. Now what happens was, for Feb 2021, XYZ college actually made the payment, not on 17th Feb, which should have been as per the contract. College actually made the payment when? Actually made the payment when? 22nd Feb. Now I want to ask from you, can you tell me the last date by which invoice has to be issued? Invoice has to be issued. In this case, can you tell me the last date? Till which date invoice has to be issued? Can anyone tell me the answer? It's a continuous supply of services, and payment has to be made as per the contract on 17th. But I actually made, if I'm a college, then I actually made the payment on 22nd Feb 21. Can you tell me what is the last date by which invoice has to be issued by the A Limited service provider? What is the last date? Any answer? Can you guess the answer? The last date is 17th Feb 2021. It does not matter when you actually made the payment. In case the due date is ascertainable from the contract, then actual date doesn't matter. You have to issue the invoice. You means whom? Supplier has to issue the invoice till 17th Feb. This is one thing. Please raise your hand if you got this concept correct. Okay, now if I make a change, let me make a small change and let me say that rather than 22nd Feb, for example, if I say that if college actually made the payment on 12th Feb 21, can you tell me the answer, the last date? What is the answer? If college actually made the payment on 12th Feb, what is the last date by which invoice has to be issued? Any answer from your side?
First March.
No. Why 1st March?
17.
मार्च तो यहाँ आएगी नहीं, मार्च का कोई रोल ही नहीं है इसमें तो. Any answer? Don't you remember that first line of section 31.5? Subject to the provisions of section 31 subsection 3 clause D, where receipt voucher has to be issued the moment payment is received. Now if the person has made advance payment, then ignore the invoice. 31.5 you will not apply. You will apply what? 31.3D, and as a supplier you have to issue receipt voucher on 12th Feb 2021. This is what the point is. That is why I say that apply in this case first section 31 subsection 3 clause D, because 31.5 says that if the due date is not ascertainable, only then you check actual date. If the due date is ascertainable, then actual date is of no use. In this case 12th Feb was of no use because actual date was ascertainable, it was given in the contract. So in case you have made the advance payment, you are not going to apply 31.5. Now you are applying 31.3D, and on 12th Feb itself you will issue what? Receipt voucher. That's it. Is the point clear? If yes, raise your hand. Otherwise, ask me the doubt. So you have to read the provisions of the Act carefully. In case due date is ascertainable, don't check actual date. In case due date is not ascertainable, only then check the actual date. And when you get the advance, then 31.5 becomes inferior than 31.3D. 31.3D gains the reputation of high level. So first I will follow 31.3D in case you receive the advance and not 31.5. I hope the concept is clear. Now, next point. Now I will discuss the point without showing you the Act to save my time. So 31.6 now last, and then some other points. 31.6 now it says so many times supply ends if supply of services ceases before completion of the contract. if the contract was for 1 year period. For example, security services contract was for 1 year period, but after 3 months, they both agreed, supplier and recipient, that let us not continue this contract because supplier was not satisfied with the recipient's behavior and recipient was not satisfied with the supplier services. For example, they decided to terminate the contract just after 3 months. Initially, the contract was for 1 year, but contract was terminated within 3 months. Then in this case, section 31(6) says that the invoice has to be issued latest by the date when contract terminates. So when supply of services ceases before completion of the contract, the invoice has to be issued latest by the day of completion of, not complete, the day of termination of the contract. That's it. With this, most of the concepts of tax invoices are over. I hope the concept is clear. And now let me discuss next point. Tax invoice in special cases. It's altogether a new concept. Apart from section 31, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we have some special cases. For this, we don't have any section. It is given in rule 54. So we have some special cases. Now, what are the particulars of special cases? Do you remember particulars of special cases? Particulars of, not special cases, sorry, particulars of tax invoices. These are given in rule 46. I hope you remember. Just some minutes ago, I told you that particulars of tax invoice are given in rule 46. So what are special cases like purchasing railway tickets? Have you seen the invoice when you purchase the ticket? Have you seen the invoices when you have availed banking or insurance services? Have you seen the invoices when you have purchased, when you have sent some goods through courier, etc., etc.? So many things are there. Now, these are special cases. Rule 54 says that in some special cases, what should be mentioned in the tax invoice? All the information or particulars which are given in rule 46 plus some additional which we will tell, which rule 54 tells. Or what? There are some special cases where altogether different particulars of tax invoice. So ignore rule 46 here. Rule 54 says in some cases I will tell you what to be mentioned in tax invoices and not rule 46. So rule 54 talks about special cases, where in some special cases rule 46 particulars plus 2 or 3 additional points, or in some special cases ignore rule 46, altogether different particulars are there. Now what are those particulars? That is not in your course, but what is in your course is those cases. So you have to learn those cases. Now what are those cases? Passenger transportation services. So those special cases are, first, whenever you are engaged in passenger transportation services, carefully check the receipt or invoices or ticket which you receive when you purchase the tickets. The format of invoice is a little bit different. Goods transportation services different. When you go and purchase any ticket to watch any movie in a multiplex, always check that tax invoice is a little bit different. Goods transportation services different. Admission in cinematograph, admission by exhibition of cinematographic films in multiplex theaters. The invoice will be different. If this supplier is your insurance company, check that if you have purchased any life insurance or general insurance, check that invoice. It will be a little bit different. If the supplier is insurance services or banking services. And I don't know whether you remember that or not. Input service distributor concept I have discussed. When there are, for example, so many branches of any company, then all branches doesn't purchase these services, doesn't avail these services. To save money, what they can do is that one office will be separately treated as input service distributor. For example, there are 200 branches of any showroom, and in all the branches air conditioners will be installed, so they need AC repairing services. So rather than having separate branch takes AMC of air conditioner services, collectively a single office will take the AMC for all these 200 branches. It results in saving of cost, because when you purchase something in bulk, the rates decreases. So that office is known as input service distributor, whose job is simply to avail services to be transferred to different branches. Detail I will discuss later on. So if any registered person whose PAN number, ISD is PAN, same of any other registered person, because there can, on one PAN number there can be different branches. It's allowed of a registered person. A person having same PAN can be having different branches of another registered person. In that case, the issuing invoice format is a little bit different. That's it. This is what you are supposed to learn. With this, I wind up my section 31 completely, and now I'm starting with section 32. Any doubt you can ask, otherwise please raise your hand that yes, your tax invoice concept is clear.
Sir, can I go to the previous slide just a minute?
Yeah, I will have to go. The moment you unmute, I understand that I have to go. Anyhow, please raise your hand if you have understood the concept of tax invoice. Section 31 plus rule 54 conceptually, that's it. Okay, so let me go to the previous slide and then I will discuss section 32, 33 and 34. Today we have to wind up this. Is it visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now section 32 is one line section. Prohibition on collection of tax. Who cannot collect GST? Who cannot collect GST? Every unregistered person cannot collect GST. No unregistered person can collect GST. It's not allowed. And similarly, a registered person can collect, but as per the provisions of the law. Can collect, but as per the provisions of the law. So even registered person cannot collect tax in such a way which is against the provisions of law. That's it. So what is the prohibition? Unregistered person can never collect GST. Registered person can collect as per the provisions of law. I think section 32 is clear. Section 33. Now, amount of GST to be indicated in the tax invoice. This is my section 33. To be indicated. To be indicated. Now, how? Now, suppose I have purchased a television of 50,000, on which, for example, 18% is GST, 9,000. So total value becomes 59,000. This is option number 1. What some person as a supplier, what that person can do? 59,000 directly. and he can simply say that the value includes GST. It is wrong. Inclusive of GST is wrong. Government says that no, as per section 33, the provision says you cannot show this. Amount of GST has to be separately mentioned. You cannot show any tax invoice. You cannot give any bill where you can write including GST. No, show the amount of GST separately. This is what the point is. So every person who is liable to pay tax has to show the amount of GST separately in all the documents. This is what my section 33 is. Please raise your hand if section 33 is also clear. Last section, and with this we will wind up our topic of tax invoice, so that tomorrow or next day after tomorrow, when I will be having the next lecture, we can be having a new topic. Now last topic, credit and debit notes. It's also very easy, credit and debit notes. This is my last topic of tax invoice. Credit and debit notes. Now what it says, now before explaining to you credit and debit notes, let me assume an example. I supplied 10,000 pens at rupees 10. So the value is 1 lakh. Supplier Mr. X. Add GST. For example, 18%. For example, 18,000. So the value is 1,18,000. So as a supplier, I raised the invoice. Invoice issued, but supply is not yet made to the recipient. Bill I have generated today, and maybe the bill will be given to the recipient tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow recipient will come at my shop. Tomorrow recipient will come at my shop, and I will give her or him the invoice, and he or she will give me the amount. But so many times we can generate the invoice one day earlier also, because if we are busy, if a businessman is busy, they can say that tomorrow the person will come, so keep the orders and invoice ready. This is what has happened. But don't you think that mistakes can also happen? What mistake can happen in such a case? Or not in such a case, in any case, what type of mistake can happen? Can you tell me what mistake I might have done? Or anyone can do mistake. Mistake one is excess value is shown. After invoice is raised, I found that the pen was not of rupee 10, it was only for rupee 9. But by showing it as rupee 10, I have shown excess value. Because of this, my tax to be given to the government will be high. Excess value is shown, then actual value. This is one mistake. So the tax payment will be more. Mistake 2, value is correct but tax rate is wrong. Maybe I have shown 18%. In reality, it should have been only 12%. So I have shown excess tax rate. So excess rate of tax is shown, then actual. Or what can happen? Mistake 3. What can happen? Mistake 3. That quantity is not actually 10,000. The quantity is only 9,500. I have shown excess quantity. In that case also, what have happened? Excess tax will be paid to the government. Excess quantity. Is shown, then actual. So in all the three situations, do you know what is happening? What is happening in all the three situations? Tax liable to be paid to the government is actually more, will be more, which is wrong. Tax liable to be paid to the government is more, and it is wrongly more. So government says no issue, don't cancel this invoice, raise credit note. So in this case, I will issue what? credit note. For example, if my actual invoice was 1 lakh into 18%, I found that in reality it should have been only 12%. So had it been 12%, I would have shown 12,000 only. So difference is 6,000. Government says no issue. For 6,000, you raise a credit note. Don't cancel that invoice. To prevent any tax evasion, government says don't cancel it. If it is issued, raise credit note. That's it. So we will understand that we have to give you back 6,000. This is what credit note is. So in case of credit note, government technically losing something. Had the earlier invoice been true, government would have received 12,000. Now government technically will get only 12,000. So 6,000 technically is a loss to the government. So government says then, when you will disclose this to us? Disclosing of credit note. When government says, when you have to show this to us? Government says, in whichever month credit note is issued. For example, it is issued in November 2020. Then show it in November 2020's return, or maximum till which date? Till September following the end of the financial year, or date of actual furnishing annual return, whichever is earlier. Now let me show you that with the help of the example what I have just said. My financial year is 2020-21. If I say 2021, I am saying that April 20 till March 21. Of course, everyone knows that till from 1st April to 31st March 21. During this year, in November 20, I got to know of some credit note and I issued that. So whenever I have to file the monthly return of 20, whenever I have to file the monthly return of 20, in that return I have to show it, or till maximum when? Suppose I forgot to show this in that return, government says no issue, maximum show it till when? Till 30th September following the end of the financial year, or actual date of furnishing annual return, not due date, actual date of furnishing annual return of this financial year. That means if in November 20 I have issued credit note, either I should disclose it in the November 2020's return when I will file, or maximum show it till when? Till 30th September 2021. And for example, actually I filed the return on 16th September itself. Assumption is, actually let me assume that I have filed the return on 16th September itself. So which is early? 30th or 16th? 16th September. So I have to show this credit note maximum by this date, 16th. If I don't show it to the government till this date, then I cannot show this credit note later. Then I have to pay the higher tax in spite of that wrongly claimed. This is what disclosing of credit note. And government says one thing, that in case, as a supplier, government says to the supplier, in case you have passed this incidence to another person, you have passed the tax incidence to another person, then you cannot furnish the credit note. That means when the incidence of tax, though it was wrong, but if other person has given you this tax, then you have no right to issue the credit note. You deposit that tax, even if wrong, to us, because that tax belongs to us. This is what credit note is. What is credit note? Is when you have charged excess tax, for the difference you can issue credit note. Show it to the government in that month's return for which you issue the credit note, or during which you issued the credit note, and maximum till which date. till 30th September from the end of the financial year in which you have issued the credit note or actual date of furnishing return, whichever is earlier. And in case you have passed the incidence to another person, then you lose your right to file or furnish or issuing credit note. This is what credit note is. But reverse situation can also happen. Reverse situation is what? That earlier tax reverse situation is what? Debit note issue. Just like I can do mistake of charging higher tax, there can be a mistake of charging less tax than actual. So government says when you have charged less tax, then issue the debit note and charge extra tax, whatever is there. Here also government says that when you have to disclose this, now government is very clever, because in debit note government is losing the revenue, so they want to collect it as soon as possible. Then government says disclose this information for the month, for which return of the month in which debit note is issued. So government is very clever. When in credit note they had to give back something to the registered person, they are saying that in case you forget to inform us in that month's return, no issue, we are giving extra time. But in debit note they are not giving extra time. They say that you have to furnish the debit note, you have to issue the debit note and inform us through your return in the same month for which return of the month in which you issued this debit note. Now they are not giving me the time to inform them till due date of furnishing return of annual return or 30th September. This is what the cleverness of the government also. So when you read the act, then you realize that the government also wants to collect the tax on priority basis. With this, my topic tax invoice is 100% over, and in the next class I will start with you the topic of time of supply. I hope you have understood the concept of tax invoice, but I have covered is more than sufficient. Don't spend your time in doing this topic from any other don't try to revise this topic with those concepts which I have not covered with you in the lecture. That's all from my side. Goodbye.